By the way, what the Taliban got in this deal? Basically, the result of this war is that the Taliban are now in a stronger position than they ever were from 1996 to 2001 because the amount of armament that we provided them is just insane. Okay, this is a graphic in the New York Times on what the Taliban just received from the United States.
アメリカにはカブールの市街を確保、混乱を最小化し、避難を求める者、全員を退避させることができるタイミングがあったが、バイデンがカブールの管理を託した相手が、アメリカ軍ではなくタリバンだったために、軍撤退前にすべての人を退避させることができなかったのである。詳細をご覧ください。
New news emerging on exactly how Kabul fell to the Taliban. There's an entire report in the Washington Post about the fall of Kabul, and it talks about the fleeing of the president of Afghanistan, how he was really supposed to stay for some sort of transition into a transitional government that would include the Taliban, which was going to be a fig leaf. But there's one part of the story that's truly astonishing, and that is Joe Biden and his administration were offered control of Kabul by the Taliban to evacuate Americans, and Joe Biden turned it down. It's in a piece titled Surprise, Panic, and Fateful Choices, The Day America Lost Its Longest War by Susanna George, Missy Ryan, Tyler Pager, Pamela Constable, John Hudson, and Griffith Witt. So like the entire staff of the Washington Post. About halfway down in the article is buried this little tidbit. U.S. officials were as surprised as anyone. The Americans had expected Ghani, who was the president of Afghanistan who fled because he was afraid he'd be disemboweled by the Taliban. They expected Ghani would stay for an orderly transition to an interim authority as the agreement that negotiators in Doha, Qatar had struck promised. News of Ghani's departure received secondhand meant that hope had been crushed. He not only abandoned his country, but then unraveled the security situation in Kabul, said a senior U.S. official. People simply melted away, from the airport to everywhere else. In the void, law and order began to break down, with reports of armed gangs moving through the streets. In a hastily arranged in-person meeting, senior U.S. military leaders in Doha, including Brett McKenzie, the commander of U.S. CENTCOM, spoke to Abdul Ghani Baradar, the head of the Taliban's political wing. We have a problem, Baradar said, according to the U.S. official. We have two options to deal with it. You, the United States military, take responsibility for securing Kabul, or you have to allow us to do it. Okay, so remember, this is the Taliban calling up the U.S. and saying, listen, Kabul is breaking down. It's in disorder. We know you're leaving anyway. So here are your options. You can make sure that order is kept in Kabul with the military presence you have left, and you can evacuate your people, or you can trust us to do it. And Joe Biden chose to trust the Taliban. Throughout the day, says the Washington Post, Biden had remained resolute in his decision to withdraw all American troops from Afghanistan. The collapse of the Afghan government hadn't changed his mind. McKenzie, aware of these orders, told Baradar the U.S. mission was only to evacuate American citizens, Afghan allies, and others at risk. The United States, he told Baradar, needed the airport to do that. On the spot, an understanding was reached. According to two other U.S. officials, the United States could have the airport until August 31st, but the Taliban would control the city. Fighters were now on the move throughout Kabul, with the group's spokesman issuing a revision of his earlier guidance. The Taliban hadn't intended to even take Kabul that day, but Ghani's exit gave the group no choice. I mean, that's unbelievable. So the Taliban are calling up the United States and saying, would you like to keep Kabul for the moment? Well, while you evacuate your people and keep some order. And we're like, no, you do it. That was the Joe Biden approach. By the way, what the Taliban got in this deal? Basically, the result of this war is that the Taliban are now in a stronger position than they ever were from 1996 to 2001 because the amount of armament that we provided them is just insane. Okay, this is a graphic in the New York Times on what the Taliban just received from the United States. 22,000 Humvees, 634 M1-117s, 169 M113 armored personnel carriers, 42,000 pickup trucks and SUVs, 64,000 machine guns, 8,000 trucks, 162,000 radios, 16,000 night vision goggles and devices, which, by the way, was the chief American advantage in terms of special forces because none of these people could see in the dark, but our guys could. We handed them 360,000 assault rifles. So just, Joe Biden is more interested in you getting an assault rifle if you're a member of the Taliban than if you're an American citizen. If you want to buy an AR-15 in the United States, he thinks that you're very bad and very dangerous. If you're a member of the Taliban, he, along with his administration, will hand them 360,000 assault rifles, 126,000 pistols, 176 artillery pieces. We handed them 33 helicopters, Mi-17 helicopters. We handed them 33 UH-60 Blackhawks. We handed them another 43 MD-530s. Those are all helicopters. So if you total that up, we handed them over 100 helicopters. We handed them fixed-wing aircraft. This is what we gave to the Taliban. 4 C-130 transports. As someone pointed out, don't we have any ability to like turn off the ignition switches here? We handed them 28 Cessnas. We handed them 10 Cessna strike aircraft. It's unbelievable. We left them an enormous $85 billion arsenal. That is what we handed to the Taliban because Joe Biden is an incompetent buffoon.